All right, let's take a look back on Tuesday night in New York City, Madison Square Garden against Connecticut. Tar Heels fall by 11, 87-76, the final score in that one. Adam, I thought that game was a lot more about Connecticut than it was the Tar Heels, and that doesn't mean there weren't angles to this game from Carolina that are useful to discuss. I just think Connecticut's a better team at this moment. I think they are experienced. I think they have proven, obviously, winning the national championship a year ago. They have guys back from that team that are used to winning. They really can shoot the ball well. They've got good size. They've got great guard play. I mean, they are a complete team, as we talked about. Their offense in particular, I think, is really high level. I just found it interesting as that game played out. I mean, so much of their offense is the ball is outside the three-point arc, but there's so much movement off the ball, like constant movement off the ball. And then they do a good job of then, once that movement provides them either with a lane to penetrate, with a pass that's open, to the post, back door, whatever it may be, they find that open guy. I was really impressed with their offensive efficiency, and they came into the game number 3 in the country in that regard. So an excellent team that I thought played well in addition to being very good, and they won the game. For the Tar Heels, I don't think the Tar Heels are one of the 5 best teams in the country right this second. I think Carolina is probably in that 10 to 20 range. I think that's a comfortable range for them and an accurate range for them right now. Carolina still needs to get better defensively. Hubert Davis has made it, in my opinion, he has made it in a point to try and slow down outside shooting from the opposition. I think teams shoot better from 2 against Carolina than they have in the past because the Tar Heels focus on trying to take away the 3 ball a little bit more. So they got to find the right balance there. I thought Carolina, when it got tough and shots weren't falling in the second half, got a little bit away from the quality offense that we've seen them have so far this year and focused a little more on saying, RJ Davis, you're a good offensive player. Here's the ball. Go make something happen. And that's a good option sometimes. RJ is having a terrific year and had a good game in this game, 26 points. But I thought they got away a little bit from that team-wide offense that we've seen them do well this season. And UConn hurt them on the boards. And that's just something that Carolina's got to figure out. I don't think Carolina has rebounded. There have been moments where Carolina's rebounded really well this year, and then there have been some games where they haven't. And this game, they got out-rebounded pretty significantly, 43-33, including Connecticut getting 11 offensive rebounds. And the interesting thing about those 11 offensive rebounds wasn't that it turned into a ton of points. They got 8 second chance points. But as Hubert Davis said after the game, it was more about the fact that it took possessions away from Carolina. It stopped the Tar Heels from getting in transition, and I thought that was a factor in the game too. So I don't think – nothing that happened in this game changed my opinion about Carolina. I think the Tar Heels are a good team. They're not yet an elite team. I think they have the ability to continue to grow and get closer to that range that we hope the Tar Heels will be by the end of the season. I just think at this second, Connecticut is a better, more finished product than the Tar Heels are, and I think you saw that on Tuesday night.
I'm pretty sure Connecticut's the best team that I've seen this year that the Tar Heels have played.
Absolutely.
And we didn't even see a full-speed Stephon Castle, or he may have been full speed but not fully integrated into the rotation, who all the Connecticut folks seem to think is going to make them even better. They have a good coach who is easily detestable because he's a Hurley and he acts like one, but he has them playing offensively so well, they just make it so easy for you to break down because of all the things they make you do every time down the court. And the Tar Heels just weren't able to do it enough times. They weren't really able to get turnovers. I thought when Carolina went to the press, Connecticut looked like a team that had seen that on film, whereas Florida State looked like a team that had never considered the possibility before, which probably makes sense because the Tar Heels hadn't really showed it. They showed it against Florida State. They got a couple turnovers, and there was one moment there where RJ Davis got a steal and I think cut it to 5, where it felt like it was having an impact, but then UConn would come back and break it very adeptly and get easy shots. That's the mark of a well-coached team, which is what they are. On offense, seemed like Carolina shortened down the rotation a little bit, which I think is a natural thing that is going to happen over the course of the season. They were heavily reliant on R.J. Davis and Harrison Ingram. They didn't get enough inside. And I think that is something that overall would solve a couple of those things you're talking about. The rebounding, you've got to get more from more people. And defensively, I don't know that teams are really concerned about going at the rim against the Tar Heels. And so that's something you've got to figure out. If you're going to take away the three, their next option is going to be drive it and see what happens then. And UConn had some success doing that. But again, UConn's really good. So, but here's the other issue. The next two teams Carolina plays are really good, as far as we know. Are they as good as UConn? I don't know. We're about to find out in the next 2 weeks. This is a tough part of the schedule where things like this are going to happen.
Kentucky and Oklahoma, of course, the next two games for Carolina before the Christmas break. Armando Bacot's got to be more efficient against good teams than he was in this game for Carolina to have a great chance to win against a team like UConn. You can't have Armando go 4 of 12 from the field and 5 of 10 at the free throw line. And I'm not trying to call him out individually. I'm just saying he is too important for the Tar Heels and their level of success to have those kind of efficiency numbers against a good team. That Carolina's not going to win that game very often if things like that are happening. And at some point, the Tar Heels need Cormac Ryan to hit some shots. 0 of 6 from 3, 3 of 10 from the field. Those are two of your starters right there in Bacot and Ryan, two guys you're relying on that goes 7 of 22 from the field. And so, again, I'm not trying to say that Tar Heels didn't lose this game specifically because of those two guys. Carolina, just to be the best team that it can be, needs them to be more efficient than that. I do think it's become now a little bit of a mental thing with Cormac Ryan where he's visibly frustrated. Let's remember, Cormac Ryan's not like a 45% career three-point shooter. But he's also better than where he is right now, which is like around 25%. He should be living, if you believe in percentages, in that 36 to 38 range for the Tar Heels, which would be a very good shooting range for him to be in. So some of those shots need to go in. And if Bacot is 9 of 12 and 7 of 10 at the free throw line, and of course that's easy for me to say, I'm not the one out there doing it, then this is a different game. But if he's going to shoot it 12 times, he's got to make more than 4.
Well, and if Cormac Ryan's 2 for 6 instead of 0 for 6, which would be right at that percentage you talked about, and Armando is 7 for 10 at the free throw line, which he's been consistently all year, those last couple minutes play out very differently, and we don't know exactly what happens. And in general, I still think that is probably the team Carolina is. I do think Cormac Ryan is a 35 or 36% three-point shooter. The problem is you accumulate that over a series of games, some of which you go 4 for 6 and some of which you go 0 for 6, and you end up at about 2 for 6. If he could just guarantee you 35% every single game from 3, game planning would be much simpler. I just don't think we've seen anything that leads us to believe that's not what Carolina will be overall. They weren't that. I get it on Tuesday night against UConn. It does feel like people took this better than they have some other defeats the last couple of years, because I think there's a general acknowledgement that UConn is very good.
Well, I think there's an acknowledgement that UConn's good. I think there's an acknowledgement that Carolina didn't play as well as it wanted to, but I think it also represented it. And look, Carolina basketball ain't in the game for moral victories or pats on the head. Don't get us wrong. But and some of this is unfair, Adam, because you're juxtaposing it with the last year at minimum. There were some games against good teams where you didn't feel good leaving the game. Even Hubert Davis, my last question to him after the game was, you seem more encouraged than discouraged. Why is that? And because I think that everybody could see what's in there. Carolina's not close to a finished product right now. And some of that's because one of their key players, Elliot Cadeau, is such a young player, and you can see his talent. Some of that is that some of the things, like we talked about, that you expect to happen didn't necessarily happen in this game. Again, I go back to, in no way did this game change my mind about Carolina. I think the Tar Heels are a good team, a team that is going to compete for an ACC regular season championship and compete to be a top 15-ish type of team. They are not a top 5 team right now. Connecticut is right now and probably will be the rest of the year. But I also think Carolina's got a lot of room to grow to get to that area.
It helps so much that Carolina has put on the record that it can beat good teams. Like, that has occurred already this year.
We talked about that before this game, yes.
And also that they still have two more opportunities that we just talked about. Now, if the Tar Heels lose both of those games, we're going to come back and have a totally different conversation because this game's going to feel differently. But I think you come out of it feeling different, knowing, okay, there are already wins against Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida State, and there are opportunities for wins against Kentucky and Oklahoma. You get one or two of those, I think you feel positive about the non-conference season and you feel positive about what's to come in the league.
You really need one, I think, to feel good about this stretch. And if you get two, you feel great.
Right.
So, and again, much easier to say than to do. Kentucky and Oklahoma are both very good. Oklahoma, I think, still undefeated. And they're playing really good basketballs because I think that's one that on the schedule originally people go, oh, well, I mean, I know Oklahoma's pretty good, but that's in Charlotte. But trust me, that's going to be a battle. And they've got a good coach in Porter Mosey. So some stern challenges still to come from the Tar Heels. Adam, anything else about the game, about New York? I thought Carolina had a bunch of fans there. I mean, clearly UConn and Carolina were the two most represented schools there and by fans. There was a lot of Tar Heel energy in New York, I felt like, and at least where we were because we were around the team. And in the arena, and I do think that Hubert Davis's desire to go to New York is paying dividends. I mean, you look at the roster. Carolina starts 3 guys from that area. They have a commitment from me and Jack. We talked about this some for next year. I think that desire and commitment to play there has been a positive thing for the Tar Heels.
Totally agree. Felt like the crowd was about 50-50, which is impressive against a team
who plays there a lot. I mean, Connecticut's going to end up playing at a minimum 5 games in the Garden this year. They've played one tournament there already where they played twice. Carolina, they play St. John's, their home game, and at least one game in the Big East tournament. That are all going to be there. So, that's a place they're used to going.
And for a Tuesday night, I mean, this wasn't a weekend game like
Right.
It was last year where people can plan. Probably the kids are out of school. You can go spend the weekend in New York. I think when this game, assuming Carolina at Madison Square Garden is going to be an annual thing, which I do think it is, if at all possible, when it's on the weekend, I think people are going to start treating that like a bowl trip. Like, oh, that's our chance to go see the Tar Heels in a great arena, do some fun stuff, bring the whole family. It's going to be expensive. We understand that, but we'll plan for it for several months. And we're going to treat this like a big deal. And that's what it felt like. It felt like a big deal.
Yeah. Saw a lot of folks that gave us pod shout-outs, a lot of pod listeners up there. What up? So, good times. Not the result Carolina wanted, but again, not devastation for the Tar Heels either.